What's happening, everybody? On today's show, former Georgia wide receiver Jermaine Burton announces he is headed to Alabama. How will that move shake up the SEC in 2022? We will discuss. Also, we'll go around the conference as Derek Mason officially is leaving Auburn and the SEC for a job in the Big 12. What that means for Bryan Harsin and his team next season. And we'll recap a busy weekend of SEC hoops action. Auburn took down Kentucky and what was one of the best games of the weekend. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. Great to have you guys along. Today's episode is brought to you by Sonos. Experience the game like never before with the Sonos Arc, the premium smart soundbar for TV, movies, music, gaming, and more. Visit Sonos.com to learn more. I am Chris Gordy. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at LockedOnSEC.com. Make sure to give us a follow as well if you're on Twitter. Follow the show at Locked On SEC or follow me at Chris Gordy. Let's jump into it. Plenty to discuss. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start in Tuscaloosa as Jermaine Burton, a veteran wide receiver from the University of Georgia. We knew he entered the transfer portal. He has announced his new destination. He is transferring to Alabama. Burton shared a highlight video on social media that ended with an Alabama logo. He added the RTR hashtag, which stands for Roll Tide Roll. Burton for Georgia this past season had just 26 catches for 497 yards. That ranked as the team's second leader in receiving yardage. His 5 receiving touchdowns were tied with Ladd McConkey for second most on the team, behind Brock Bowers, who had 13 touchdown grabs. But in 2020, Burton had 27 catches for over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns as a true freshman, with his receptions and yardage output ranking 3rd on the team. He's a former 4-star recruit from the state of California, had his lone catch in the Orange Bowl win that went for 57 yards. Burton made 2 catches for 28 yards in the college football championship game, including an 18-yarder to start the Bulldogs' go-ahead touchdown drive in the 4th quarter. Alabama, on the other hand, they are losing their 2 top receivers in Jamison Williams and John Mechie, who are both off to the NFL. Of course, both guys went for over 1,000 yards each this season. They combined for 23 total touchdowns. Alabama's also going to lose receiver Slade Bolden, who is off to the NFL as well. Their leading returning receivers are Trayshawn Holden, who had just 21 catches this year, and Ja'Cory Brooks, who had just 15. So lost a lot of experience at that receiver spot. Now, they will get back tight end Cameron Latu, who had over 400 receiving yards, but Jermaine Burton should certainly be poised for a monster season with the reigning Heisman Trophy winner and Bryce Young coming back for his junior season. Georgia's going to have a quarterback back. It sounds like if it's Stetson Bennett there, so a little peculiar that Jermaine Burton wouldn't want to stick it out with Stetson Bennett, presumably at Georgia, but look, the Heisman Trophy winner, Alabama, Nick Saban. Look what they just did with Jamison Williams, taking him 1 year with Ohio State to Alabama, most productive receiver in the country. Probably a good move for Jermaine Burton, and probably no hard feelings for Georgia fans. Look, they've got plenty of talent still in the holster as well, so maybe it's a win-win for both. But a lot of people still kind of wondering why he would leave Georgia. Now, Alabama did lose one of their other wide receivers to the transfer portal, and he has reportedly found a new home. Wide receiver Javon Baker, he announced over the weekend he is officially transferring to Kentucky. Baker entered the transfer portal a week ago, and now he is heading to the SEC East to play for Mark Stoops. Baker, a sophomore, appeared in 12 games this year, 21 during his 2 years in Tuscaloosa, served as a reserve wideout, played a lot on special teams, caught 7 passes for over 100 yards and a touchdown this past season. Baker was a member of Alabama's 2020 signing class, was a 4-star recruit out of the state of Georgia. Now, what does this mean for Kentucky? Well, they're already bringing in Virginia Tech transfer Tavion Robinson, who they're expecting to fill the role of Wan'Dale Robinson, who, of course, came in from Nebraska. He's off to the NFL now. But Tavion Robinson, if he can fill that role of Wan'Dale, Javon Baker is going to be Kentucky's likely replacement for that number 2 spot, Josh Ali, who is done with school. He exhausted his eligibility. But unlike at Alabama, where, the wide receiver depth chart is crowded with future NFL draft picks, Baker should become one of the most experienced options for Kentucky and one of their go-to options. He could start alongside Tavion Robinson and junior DeMarcus Harris, who posted a strong second half this year. Kentucky's also set to return senior Cleavon Thomas, who's a slot receiver who missed this year with a knee injury. So they're going to have some weapons with Will Levis back at quarterback. I like what Kentucky is doing, adding Javon Baker. Meanwhile, another guy who left Georgia this offseason, Latavius Brittany, a senior defensive back who entered the transfer portal following the win in the national championship. He has announced he is going to continue playing in the SEC. Brittany posted on Instagram he is committed to Arkansas and wrote, "Still standing on business." He's 6'2", 210 pounds, out of the state of Florida, played in 13 games, 11 starts, finished with 38 total tackles and 8 pass breakups. Was tied for second on the team. His best game came against Auburn, where he had 5 solo tackles, including 1 for a loss and a pass breakup in the victory there. It's a fifth-year senior, will have 1 year of eligibility remaining at Arkansas. Brittany will join a revamped Arkansas defense, particularly in that secondary that lost Joe Fouché and Greg Brooks, who both transferred to LSU, but they are adding Dwight McLaughlin from LSU. So the Arkansas secondary now has Dwight McLaughlin, who was at LSU last year, and Latavius Brittany, who was at Georgia last year. Man, my head is spinning from all the movement around the SEC. But Brittany, yet another addition for Arkansas via the transfer portal. He's the 6th incoming transfer, including wide receiver Jaden Hazelwood coming in from Oklahoma, defensive lineman Landon Jackson from LSU, linebacker Drew Sanders from Alabama, McLaughlin, and then walk-on quarterback Cade Fortin coming over from South Florida. Ole Miss, they lost a couple of key contributors this offseason, and it looked like they were going to lose another one as freshman DB MJ Daniels entered the transfer portal a couple days ago. But on Sunday, he apparently had second thoughts as he announced he was pulling his name out of the transfer portal. He was a freshman last year, took to Twitter to announce he's withdrawing from the portal. Versatile high school player during his career in the state of Mississippi, appeared in 2 games for Ole Miss this past year, recording 2 total tackles. So good news for Lane Kiffin's bunch, getting him to stick around. Meanwhile, over at Mississippi State, Mike Leach appears to be losing a quarterback to the transfer portal as former Southern Miss transfer Jack Abraham. He is on the way out. That's from On3 Sports. Not a big surprise, as Mike Leach told reporters in October that Abraham was no longer with the team. This is a product of Oxford High School in Mississippi, transferred in from Southern Miss to Mississippi State ahead of the 2021 season, but now he's on the move again. All right, when we return, we are going to touch on Derek Mason leaving Auburn, as well as some other news from around the conference. That's coming your way next. Thanks again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And look, if you're an SEC fan, you need to check out an incredible app for anyone who buys gas. It is called the GetUpside app. GetUpside, GetUpside. Our listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. You just download the free GetUpside app. You find it on the App Store, Google Play right now. Use our promo code SCORE, and you will get a bonus 25 cents per gallon off your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using GetUpside. You download the app for free. Use our promo code SCORE. Get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot, they're making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back. There's no catch. The cash gets added to your account. You can cash out at any time to your bank account, your PayPal, whatever. Just download the free GetUpside app. Use our promo code SCORE. Get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. That is code SCORE on the GetUpside app. Going along here, Locked On SEC, and man, we just had so much news happening. It's happening every Monday now. We have so much news happening from around the conference that we kind of have to split up around the conference into two different segments. So let's dive right back into it. Thanks, voice guy. Let's dive right back into it as Derek Mason, who was reportedly linked to the defensive coordinator opening at Oklahoma State, came out on Friday. He is officially leaving Auburn. He moves on from Auburn, and linebackers coach, assistant head coach Jeff Schmedding is being promoted to defensive coordinator. Auburn last season ranked 4th in the SEC in fewest yards per play allowed. Mason seemed to have the Auburn defense at a really good position entering the offseason. His departure followed coach Bryan Harsin firing offensive coordinator Mike Bobo, and the Tigers replaced Bobo with former Seattle Seahawks offensive assistant Austin Davis. Schmedding stepped in for Harsin as the, quote, in-person head coach about 5 months ago when Harsin tested positive for COVID. Schmedding came with Harsin over from Boise State as he spent the previous 2 seasons on Harsin's staff as the defensive coordinator for the Broncos. Bryan Harsin said in the team release, first and foremost, I want to thank Coach Mason for his leadership as our DC this past season. I wish nothing but the best for him on his next steps. The decision to leave Auburn was not an easy one for him, and he will always be a part of the Auburn family. So Derek Mason, for the first time in a long time, will not be coaching in the SEC. Remember, he was the head coach at Vanderbilt for so many years, was let go last season, and ended up going over to Auburn last offseason as the defensive coordinator. And like we said, did a pretty good job. But Derek Mason on his way out, no longer at Auburn. They will promote Jeff Schmedding to DC. Now, Auburn alum Jimmy Brumbaugh, also a former All-SEC defensive lineman. He has joined Harsin's staff as the new D-line coach. And some other good news, Christian Robinson is an experienced SEC coach and player. He joins the staff as linebackers coach / defensive run game coordinator. Now, Brumbaugh, he comes to the SEC after spending last season as a defensive analyst over at Oregon. His most recent on-field coaching role was at Tennessee, where he coached the Vols D-line coach, but he also had stops at Kentucky and LSU. Robinson, meanwhile, has been on the Florida staff the past 4 seasons. His first on-field coaching gig is a former Georgia defender, also has experience as an assistant at Georgia, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. And Harsin also announced that edge linebackers coach and special teams coordinator Burt Watts has added the title of associate head coach. So if you're an Auburn fan, what do you make of the changes? Are they good moves? Do you like them? Are they questionable moves? Well, we're going to find out very quickly. And these moves are either going to lead to Bryan Harsin solidifying himself at Auburn, having a very long career there, or this could start the spiraling downfall of the Bryan Harsin experiment at Auburn, and it could lead to him being gone in another year or so. Again, hate to keep throwing money around, buying out Gus Malzahn and all these moves, but then you got to make the right hire. Out of all the coaches in the SEC right now, I think Auburn fans are the one fan base kind of wondering, do we have the right guy? Whereas I think some of the other jobs, even Florida and LSU making changes, they both feel like they got the right guy in place. I think some Auburn fans are sitting there wondering, is Bryan Harsin the guy to lead this program the next 5 years plus whatever? We will see. Some other news from around the conference. Arkansas, they just finished off a solid season with Sam Pittman going 9-4, but the Razorbacks make some changes this offseason. They will do so on the defensive line. The Hogs have reportedly fired their defensive line coach, Jamal Ashley, who spent 1 year at Arkansas. Ashley came over from Tulsa prior to last year, having spent 6 years there. Barry Odom still in place as Arkansas's defensive coordinator. So we'll see what direction they go in for their new D-line coach. Jimbo Fisher, meanwhile, he's adding a former head coach to his staff. Steve Adazio will be Texas A&M's new offensive line coach. Adazio is 62 years old. He was the head coach at Colorado State last year, but he has multiple decades of experience coaching offensive linemen. In fact, when Urban Meyer was at Florida, Adazio coached tackles and tight ends in 2006, and then in 07 and 08, Adazio coached the whole offensive line for the Gators and won 2 national championships there. So Steve Adazio, good pedigree, and a nice addition for Jimbo Fisher and his staff. Over at LSU, they announced 2 new training assistants to their staff. Ike Brown will serve as associate development coach, and Scott Kuhn will be the team's manager of applied sports science. Now, Brown comes to LSU after having served as the head strength and conditioning coach for the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the Canadian Football League for the past several seasons. So some new additions for Brian Kelly's staff there. Meanwhile, over at Vanderbilt, after 5 seasons, linebacker Braden DeVault-Smith is entering the transfer portal. He announced on Friday he is in the portal as a grad transfer. Players are not bound to leave when they enter the portal, but we'll see if DeVault-Smith and where he ends up. He recorded 10 of his 31 career tackles last season, including 2.5 for a loss and 2 sacks. So a nice player out there in the transfer portal to be had. Will he end up in another SEC school like all this movement of guys going from one SEC school to another? We will see. Again, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we will recap what was a very busy weekend for SEC hoops as a big game. Kentucky losing to Auburn. We'll recap that and much more in just a second. But first, I need to remind you guys about BetOnline. They would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue to march throughout the NFL playoffs. We got the AFC and NFC championship games happening this weekend, and BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the best sports wagering action throughout this year. It is a new year. They got a new updated desktop and mobile website. You can sign up today, receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to get started. That's LOCKEDON. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, baseball's right around the corner. They got it all for you. Don't wait to take advantage of all their amazing offers throughout this year. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. Also, it is the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit or even just eating healthier, you need to make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar. It tastes like a candy bar, but maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easy for you to stick to your resolutions because it tastes so good you will actually want to eat it. Unlike some of those protein bars out there that taste chalky or just plain awful, you will want to eat healthy when you have a Built Bar because it just tastes so good. It is chocolate. It is covered in 100% real chocolate. Many Built Bars contain just 130 calories, 4 grams sugar, 4 grams net carbs. Most importantly, 17 grams of protein packed in there. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has no protein and it's packed with sugars and everything else. Go to Built.com right now. Check out some of their amazing flavors. They got everything from coconut almond to raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, everything you could think of. They are always coming out with new limited time flavors as well. So go check them out at Built.com. Make sure you use our promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15. You get 15% off your first order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Final segment here on Locked On SEC. And look, there was tons of stuff happening over the weekend across the SEC when we talk SEC hoops. So let's jump right into it and recap the weekend that was in SEC basketball. And we start on the plains of Auburn, the game of the weekend. It was number 2 Auburn playing host to number 12 Kentucky, and this one did not disappoint. The Wildcats jumped out to an early lead, dominated much of the first half. Kentucky led 33-29 at halftime, but just 9 minutes of action, Kentucky lost point guard Ty Washington to injury, and that really bogged down their offense, particularly in the second half, as Auburn went on to win it 80-71. Walker Kessler led the way with 19 points and 7 boards. Jabari Smith, he had 14 points. I'm seeing some mock drafts now talking Jabari Smith maybe number 1 overall in the NBA draft. K.D. Johnson, he had 17. Wendell Green, he had 11 points off the bench. For the Cats, it was Oscar Tshiebwe with 16 points and 14 rebounds, but it was a monster win that plenty of Auburn students camped out overnight for as they brought it throughout the game. I saw pictures of them all camped out in their tents in the freezing cold outside the arena, but folks were bringing them donuts and food and stuff to keep them hydrated and ready to go, and a heck of a win for the Auburn Tigers to remain undefeated in SEC play. Sends a clear message. They deserve to be the number one team in the country. No offense to Gonzaga. But after the game, Bruce Pearl was interviewed on CBS while the jungle crowd at Auburn Arena celebrated. And Bruce Pearl recognized, hey, football may be king here, but he said Auburn is an everything school. Meanwhile, number 24, Tennessee, they got a nice win for themselves at home, beating number 13, LSU, 64-50. Santiago Vescovi had 16 points and 6 boards with 5 assists. LSU really missing their starting point guard, Xavier Pinson. He has missed a handful of games, and LSU now on a 3-game losing streak after they started the year 15-1. Tari Eason, he had 16 points for LSU. The Vols, they shot 35% from 3. LSU shot just 21% from deep. Tennessee, they improved to 13-5 overall, 4-3 in the conference, and maybe starting to trend the right direction now after they kind of lost some games early in conference play that they didn't expect to. Meanwhile, after their 3-game losing streak, Alabama, they have now won 2 in a row. Their latest, an 86-76 home win over Mizzou on Saturday. Jaden Shackelford led the way, 21 points and 7 rebounds. J.D. Davison, he had 17 points for Bama. Jerron Coleman had 17 for Mizzou, and Mizzou has now lost 3 of their last 4. They are just 8-10 overall on the season this year, going sideways for the Missouri Tigers, who are used to being a top 25 team, used to going to the tournament, but not looking likely right now. Meanwhile, Mississippi State, they stomped all over Ole Miss, beating them 78-60 to improve to 4-2 in the conference. Iverson Molinar led the way, 20 points for the Bulldogs. Ole Miss, they dropped to 9-9 on the year, just 1-5 in conference play. Coach Kermit Davis's squad having a rough season. They had some high expectations coming into the year. But meanwhile, on the other side, Ben Howland, he's having one of his best starts, probably his best start since he's been in Starkville. See if they can make some noise down the stretch of the year. After starting the season 15-2 and 4-0 in the SEC, Texas A&M, they have now lost 2 in a row. They lost last week at home to Kentucky, and then they dropped in overtime on Saturday at Arkansas, 76-73. Wade Taylor had 25 points for the Aggies off the bench, but it was all for naught as JT Notte led the Razorbacks with 17 points and 6 rebounds. Arkansas really reversing course, man. They started 0-3 in the conference. They have now won 4 in a row and are a red-hot team in the SEC. They will head down to Ole Miss on Wednesday. Some other games from the weekend. Florida beat Vandy 61-42. Tyree Appleby scored 11 points. And the Gators are now 3-3 in the SEC. South Carolina, they beat up on Georgia 83-66. Eric Stevenson had 20 points for the Gamecocks. And Carolina, they're now 2-4 in the conference, while Georgia, a dismal 0-6. Wow, Tom Crane and crew really doing some soul-searching over there in Athens. We do have a game tonight in Oxford. It is Florida at Ole Miss. The Gators are about a 6-point road favorite according to BetOnline. This is a makeup game from the game that was originally scheduled back on December 29th. So good to see they are getting that one in and making it up. And that is your recap from the weekend that was across the conference, talking SEC hoops. That is just about going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. Thank you guys again for making us your first listen every day. Now you can go make your second listen. Check out some of our great podcasts across the Locked On Podcast Network, particularly the Locked On Bets podcast with your boy Q and Lee Sterling, giving you all the picks you need. Also a reminder, if you missed any of our great podcasts from last week, some really, really good interviews with Joe Fouché, the new defensive back at LSU, who's transferring from Arkansas, and also DeCarrion Joyner, the wide receiver, quarterback turned wide receiver turned quarterback, who played quarterback in the bowl game for South Carolina and won the Duke's Mayo Bowl, was named the MVP. A really good conversation with DeCarrion Joyner talking about the offseason for South Carolina and what they're expecting to do next year. So it's a couple of great conversations if you missed them. We'll also continue our series this week, previewing the offseason from around the conference. We've already done Ole Miss. We've done Tennessee. We'll jump into some more schools as this week rolls along. And also, coming up next week, we're going to start previewing some of the baseball teams across the conference. Man, high expectations again for the reigning champs of Mississippi State. Texas A&M's got a new coach. LSU's got a new coach. Tons of stuff going on around the SEC when it comes to baseball, and excited to watch what should be a really good season starting up in less than a month. I'm Chris Gordy. Again, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC.